You've been sensing it for a while, that something isn't quite right. Even in moments when everything around you appears stable, a quiet unease lingers. It's not mere anxiety. It's the universe pulling back the veil, revealing the uncomfortable truth you've tried to ignore. You're not ready. This isn't an accusation. It's a sacred reminder. The discomfort isn't random. It's a signal, a test, a sacred prelude to transformation. Just before life shifts in monumental ways, it often dismantles your current identity piece by piece. Friends vanish. Opportunities dissolve. Motivation fades. It feels like you're unraveling, but you're not falling apart. You're being stripped of illusions. Everything you thought you were, everything you clung to for validation. Carl Jung called it the ego death, and it's not poetic metaphor. It's the burning away of false layers, the destruction of who you pretended to be, so that who you really are can begin to emerge. The universe never wastes pain. Every collapse is sacred architecture. It's the soul's way of preparing the ground for what's to come, not through comfort, but through fire. Transformation does not arrive dressed in light. It comes disguised as chaos. And the universe, in its infinite intelligence, never grants real change to a mind still trapped in comfort. You ask for a new life, for peace, for alignment, for purpose, but then you resist the very process designed to deliver it. You plead for clarity, but reject confusion. You seek growth, but refuse the necessary discomfort. You want the reward without the restructuring. But here's the paradox that Carl Jung knew so well. What you're asking for already exists, but it cannot be held by the person you are now. It demands a metamorphosis, and that metamorphosis begins with the ego's unraveling. The ego, the fragile shell built from societal praise, childhood wounds, and inherited fears, wants improvement, not revolution. It wants change that doesn't threaten its illusions. But the soul demands truth, and truth always disrupts. So the universe begins its examination, not through grand gestures, but through silence, through endings, through the stillness after the storm, where nothing makes sense and everything aches. It watches not how loudly you cry for change, but how willing you are to die to your former self. This isn't symbolic. It's cellular. It's spiritual molting. And unless you're willing to let the old story burn, every identity, every justification, every excuse, you'll keep orbiting the same pain, cloaked in different circumstances, mistaking the repetition for fate. But it's not fate. It's feedback. Life isn't punishing you. It's showing you what you're still clinging to. The question is no longer, what do I want? But what am I unwilling to release? This is the space where illusions die. The moment when the universe stops responding to your words and starts watching your alignment. Because it doesn't care what you say you want. It cares what you're structured to receive. You can recite affirmations daily, visualize abundance, speak of healing, growth, awakening. But if your nervous system still clings to old fears, if your actions still orbit around the comfort of who you used to be, then nothing changes. This is where the real examination happens. Not in your thoughts, but in your embodiment. When things fall apart, do you tighten your grip or do you finally surrender? When no one validates you, do you collapse or do you stand firm in who you're becoming? When the familiar dissolves, do you chase after it or do you dare to sit in the void and let it recreate you? Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is the crucible of becoming. When your unconscious beliefs are no longer hidden beneath distractions or relationships or certainty. When they rise like smoke from the ruins, you are being invited to meet yourself in raw form. And it's terrifying, but it's also holy. Because if you can stay through the silence, stay through the loss, stay through the redefinition, you don't just evolve. You become unshakable. You begin to carry a frequency that no longer begs, no longer explains, no longer performs. It simply resonates. And from that resonance, reality begins to respond, not with chaos, but with clarity, not with resistance, but with recognition. Because now, you're no longer asking for change. You are change. And in this new state, something remarkable happens. You stop needing permission. You stop needing proof. You stop needing the universe to show you signs because you have become the sign. Your presence shifts from seeking to radiating, from hoping to knowing. This isn't arrogance, it's coherence. You no longer beg the world to reflect your worth back to you because you've made peace with it within yourself. And ironically, it is in that surrender that everything starts aligning. The people who once ignored you begin to notice. The paths that were blocked begin to open. Not because you forced them, but because you've stopped vibrating in conflict with your own truth. Jung understood this inner alignment as the return to self, the point where the fragmented parts of you stop competing and begin harmonizing. No more chasing closure in others. No more explaining your path to people not meant to walk it. No more shrinking to stay relatable. When you reach this threshold, you become like gravity, quiet, still, but undeniable. And yes, some will fall away. Some will not know how to hold your silence, your clarity, your refusal to entertain the old games. Let them go, because the version of you that begged for scraps no longer exists. The version that feared solitude now recognizes its power, and the identity that was stitched together by survival has been burned away to reveal the one thing that cannot be taken, who you were before the world told you who to be. But here's the deeper truth. The moment you step into this alignment, the universe doesn't reward you with ease. It rewards you with responsibility. It begins to place in your hands the kind of challenges that match your newfound clarity. Why? Because you're no longer being tested for who you might become. You're now being trusted for who you already are. The weight increases, not because you are weak, but because you're finally strong enough to carry it. Opportunities arise that once would have broken you, but now they sharpen you. Conversations that used to trigger you now reveal how far you've come. Rejections no longer define you, they redirect you. Jung knew this inner capacity as individuation, the process of becoming whole. And wholeness isn't about perfection, it's about integrity, about making choices that honor your inner voice. Even when no one else understands, you begin to see the illusions for what they are. The noise of the world trying to pull you back into sleep. But now you're awake. And when you're awake, even the pain becomes sacred. It no longer feels like punishment. It becomes the forge, the sacred fire that reshapes not just your reality, but your soul. And once you've stepped into this fire, this sacred discomfort, you start to understand why everything had to fall apart before it could come together. The silence wasn't abandonment. It was preparation. The closed doors weren't rejection, they were redirection. The loneliness wasn't punishment, it was space being cleared for you to meet yourself. You stop begging the universe to rescue you and start becoming the kind of person who doesn't need rescuing. Your energy shifts, your presence deepens, and without even trying, you start to affect the reality around you. People sense the change. Some admire it, others fear it, but you no longer adjust your light to keep others comfortable. You let it burn, because now you've realized the most important truth of all. The universe was never testing you to break you. It was testing you to reveal you. It wanted to see if you would choose truth over comfort, clarity over illusion, self-responsibility over blame. And when you did, reality responded, not by granting all your wishes instantly, but by aligning you with a life that finally made sense, because it was born from within, not imposed from without. And now, with this new alignment, the world no longer feels like an obstacle course designed to exhaust you. It becomes a mirror reflecting the depth of your transformation. Challenges still arise, but they no longer crush you. They refine you. Rejection no longer wounds you. It redirects you. Silence no longer terrifies you. It centers you. Because now you understand. Your external reality is simply responding to the frequency of your internal truth. You've stopped chasing validation and started honoring resonance. You don't need to prove yourself anymore because your mere existence in full alignment is proof enough. And as this inner coherence takes root, the universe no longer tests you with chaos. Instead, it begins to collaborate with you in flow. Synchronicities increase. clarity becomes constant. And the people who enter your life are no longer lessons in pain, but reflections of your rising. You become the version of yourself who no longer settles, no longer shrinks, no longer negotiates their light. You've become someone who doesn't just survive transformation, you embody it. Not because you forced change, but because you finally allowed it. And in that allowance, everything shifted. And now that everything has shifted, the quiet becomes sacred. You're no longer afraid of the void because you understand it as a space of creation, not absence. The pause no longer feels like punishment. It feels like permission. Permission to rebuild not just a life, but a self no longer rooted in reaction, but in intention. And with this, something extraordinary emerges, a deep peace that doesn't depend on outcomes, on success, on being understood. It's a peace that comes from being whole, finally whole. This is when you realize the journey was never about becoming someone else. It was about shedding everything you were never meant to carry. You begin to forgive yourself for the delays, the denials, the patterns repeated too many times. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. You know now, every breakdown was a rehearsal for your rise. Every hesitation, a moment of divine recalibration. And with each breath, you step further into the life that was always waiting for you. Not when you became perfect, but when you became honest. Because the universe was never waiting for the flawless version of you. It was waiting for the real one. So now you walk differently. Not with arrogance, but with rootedness. Not to prove, but to express. You no longer seek to be chosen, because you have chosen yourself. And in that decision, the universe finally responds. Not with fireworks, but with alignment. People who match your frequency begin to appear. Opportunities arise that don't demand you shrink to fit. The life you used to chase begins to unfold naturally. Not because it was handed to you, but because you became the kind of person it belongs to. And even if storms still come, you no longer fear them. You've weathered your own inner chaos. You know how to rebuild from the ashes. You trust yourself to hold your center no matter what. That is power, not control over the world, but deep coherence within. And it's from this place that you finally understand. The test was never about surviving life's pressure. It was about learning how to stop running from your own light. You passed the test the moment you stopped waiting and decided to begin.